whom you have acknowledged is alive?
First of all, calling pregnancy simply discomfort is belittling the experience. But you can also think
it's
like
beautiful
this.
and miraculous too, but it's also uncomfortable.
Says the white man who will never experience it. But you can think of it. No, so
I thought that can men become pregnant or no?
If you have a uterus,
a man with a uterus
can. Uterus, Michael.
So
because if you don't have a uterus, then you're not the men that we're.
Well, look, I'm not a biologist, so I'm not sure if I'll become pregnant. I do have a little emoji that tells me that these days men can become pregnant. Regardless of that. If you're talking about non-consensual sex, what percentage of
debates like this don't happen anymore? Most left-wing activists won't sit across from a conservative host and defend their position for more than 30 seconds before running to a safe space. Today, a third-year medical student and pro-abortion activist walked into Michael Knowles' show thinking she had this locked. She didn't. Stick around, because by the end of this, her own logic eats itself alive.
I can't say that it's a pleasure, but I'm excited to help you expand your perspective.
Well, that's very kind of you to do that. So, Bronte, before we get to the issue of abortion itself, which I suspect we will get to, I guess we have to get to this issue that Anna Kasparian raised and that is really at the heart of this Supreme Court decision in the past week of the news cycle. Namely, does the Constitution enshrine a right to abortion? It seems very difficult to argue that it does. One, because I don't see that right anywhere. The judges who decided that there was a right in 1973, a right that previously had never been acknowledged in the Constitution, they said that it was found within the emanations and the penumbras, and they couldn't quite point to exactly where it was, but hey, anyway, it's there. Then you had Planned Parenthood v. Casey in the early 1990s, which actually overruled part of Roe versus Wade, at least in the argument for why we needed legal abortion, but nevertheless upheld legal abortion, and it was all kind of just a big jumbled mess. So is it your position that the Constitution provides for some heretofore invisible right to an abortion, regardless of what you think about the issue?
It is my opinion that we have a right to privacy, and abortion is a medical procedure, and the right to privacy does extend to the discussions between a patient and a medical provider.
Okay, but I could have a right to privacy with my mafia capo, and we could decide to whack my political enemy. And I guess those conversations would be private. I don't think there is some generalized right to privacy in the Constitution. But even if they were, that would have no bearing on the life of the person that we're going to kill, right?
Well, the discussion between you and your mafia friend is very different from a discussion between a patient and a medical provider. We have laws that protect patient privacy for this exact reason.
But I suppose you're right. The distinction is that right now it's illegal for me to talk to my mafia boss and call out a hit on someone I don't like. And it is legal right now, at least according to the civil law, for a woman to talk to a doctor and kill her child. But that very likely will not remain legal if Roe versus Wade is overturned in 13, 14 states. Instantly, that will become illegal. So I guess I'm just talking about the matter itself, beyond questions of the civil law, which might be changing in real time right now. What's the difference? If you're saying it's all about a right to privacy, I'm saying, no, it's about the baby that's being killed. So do you have an answer for that, or are we just denying the humanity of the baby?
No, absolutely. So when you put up a scenario of trying to put out a hit with the mafia, you are talking about murdering a born, living, conscious, sentient, autonomous person. When we talk about abortion, we are talking about ending a non-autonomous life. You do not have the right to bodily autonomy if you are not autonomous. And if you are a fetus prior to the limit of viability, you do not have autonomy. Therefore, you do not have the right to bodily autonomy.
This is a great point.
You reside inside of the body of an autonomous person, and the right to bodily autonomy allows you to refuse to use your body to support the life of another person. So
this is a precise and important point you've made. You've acknowledged that abortion ends a life, but you've said, those were your exact words, you just said that the life is not autonomous. Would you say that a 2-day-old post-birth baby is autonomous?
It has bodily autonomy, and its body system is able to function autonomously. Yes.
The baby can feed itself?
You are trying to get to the point where they require external resources, but any person can provide that infant external resources. The utilization of someone's internal organs is very different from providing external resources. You cannot force someone to be a parent and provide external resources. You can give up that child at any point that you stop consenting to your parental responsibilities and your parental rights.
Okay, that's fine. So we've acknowledged now that the baby is living in the womb or outside the womb. It's a living being, and that the baby is not really autonomous. I mean, maybe it has.
Notice what just happened. Knowles opens with the actual legal question nobody in the mainstream media wants to ask. Where, precisely, does the Constitution say any of this? And her answer? Right to privacy. That's it. That's the whole argument the entire abortion regime has been built on since 1973 emanations, penumbras, vibes. Knowles doesn't even need to raise his voice. He just lays the mafia analogy on the table and lets her squirm, because she instantly has to admit, well, that's different. Of course it's different. Because deep down, she knows privacy doesn't erase a body count. Then comes the real gut punch. He gets her to admit, on record, that abortion ends a life. Not a clump of cells. Not a product of pregnancy. A life. And her only way out is to invent a brand new category called non-autonomous life that magically doesn't count until Knowles asks about a 2-day-old newborn. And suddenly her own rule falls apart in real time. This is what happens every single time the actual argument gets pressure tested instead of shouted through a bullhorn on a college quad. If you're tired of watching the left dodge basic questions like this, smash that like button right now and subscribe, because we've got more of these takedowns coming. And you do not want to miss the next one. Now watch what happens when Knowles brings this back to the body itself.
It seems to me when we treat women as mothers, we are valuing them. I think it's devaluing women to use them for sex and try to avoid the consequences of sex by killing the baby and then pretending it's somehow legitimate because the baby is not sentient. So as though we could kill someone in a coma, or as though someone who were asleep, the baby were not particularly conscious, as though we could kill people who had mental disabilities. I don't think any of those arguments really work. And I think the issue that's at heart here is that you are suggesting that women being used as vessels for sexual pleasure without dealing with the consequences of sex, namely the creation of human beings, that is somehow more liberating and more empowering than women coming together in love and giving that love with a man to a human being. I think that's what it really comes down to.
I find it interesting that whenever you talk about women having sex, you say that we are used, and that proves the fact that
not whenever.
Right.
Only in your version of it. Not in. No. I don't think women should be used for sexual pleasure.
Incorrect. It seems like men still believe that sex is something that they do to women and not.
No. You must have misheard me, Bronte. I said that men and women. And I don't think I did, but that's up for the listeners to decide. I said that the more valuing, liberating, flourishing view of sex is that men and women come together because they are complementary, they love one another, they join together in marriage, and they create new human life. And that's a beautiful, miraculous, wonderful thing. And I think that the view of the pro-abortion movement is that women ought to be used as merely vessels for sexual pleasure with an out of accountability, such that if there is a product of love, or maybe not so much love, namely a child that comes out of that sexual union, that baby ought to be killed. I think that's a devaluing of women rather than a valuing or a liberation.
Minimizing women's value to the role of motherhood is simply misogynistic.
Minimizing? I think that's maximizing, frankly.
According to
the universe.
Your worldview, which is obviously flawed.
Well, I don't know. We were both born of mothers, and I'm quite happy for that value that was added to my life.
And I'm very happy that my mother consented to the pregnancy that brought me forth. But I would never want my mother to bring me into the world against her will.
All right. I don't think that. I don't think our discussion of will or value or any of those things, I think it has boiled down to this particular point of what the body is for, right? I mean, isn't that kind of what we're talking about here? Is our body is sex for the maximal individual pursuit of pleasure, or is it for something else? Is it for a baby? Is it for unitive love? Is it for something beyond just our own desires?
Your body is whatever you want it to be used for. That is the basis of consent and bodily autonomy. You cannot decide what the use and value of someone's body is for them, and that is the root of the pro-choice stance.
What about the body of the baby in the abortion?
When the
Can you decide that?
when the baby lacks autonomy and it requires the body of an autonomous person in order to live, that autonomous person must exercise their bodily autonomy, and at any point they must consent to supporting that possible life.
And there it is, the mask slips completely. Knowles reads her the Naomi Wolf quote, a pro-choice feminist icon from the 90s, who flat out said the movement needs to stop pretending the unborn baby isn't a baby and just own the argument honestly. And what does our medical student do with that honesty? She dodges it entirely and pivots straight to bodily autonomy, because admitting the humanity of the child destroys her entire framework. Knowles doesn't let her slide. He lays out the actual disagreement in one sentence. Is the human body for something greater than yourself? For love? For family? For life? Or is it just a pleasure delivery device with zero accountability attached? Her answer, essentially, your body is whatever you want it to be used for. No mention of the other body inside her own argument that doesn't get a vote. This is the entire philosophical rot at the center of the pro-abortion movement, laid bare in real time, dressed up in clinical language about autonomy and consent. But when you strip away the buzzwords, it's just a justification for zero consequences. Knowles ends it with class thanking her for showing up, which is more grace than most conservatives get on a hostile stage. But make no mistake, this wasn't a draw. This was a demolition, one careful question at a time.